Okay, guys. First of all, I just want to apologize. This was supposed to happen at 3 o'clock. Then I put it to 9 p.m. Just because I didn't know when I was going to get home. My little boy was putting his feet on my curio cabinet, my baby, my youngest, and he pushed his little leg through the curio cabinet. And he's not hurt, he's okay, but he did have a little cut, and I just wanted to have it looked at. So that's why this live is not happening when it was supposed to happen. So with that said, I just wanted to come on here and talk to you guys before we got started, because this week we're going to be delving into some heavy stuff, and it's just a lot for me, and so I know it's going to be a lot for you guys. So we're going to be talking about the white man's burden and paternalism. And I just want to give you an idea of what the format for tonight's going to look like. So first, I'm going to be doing two readings. One is dealing with the racial purification of the Aborigine population, which by all intents and purposes, these are Black people who are extinct. Again, these are not of Afro descent Blacks, but they are Black. There's no denying that, right? And I want to read about the racial purification of them. It's just really quick. And then I want to read about Cecil, who was the Aborigine protector who spearheaded this. And I want to read a selection from Australia regarding him, his biography. And I want you to note that at the end of that biography, they mention paternalism. And they mention something that was hearkened to in the book that we read, which was that the Black Aborigines would start to hate them because of their paternalism when all they were trying to do was help them. Now, mind you that Aborigines even just got the right to vote in the 70s. They just got citizenship of their own land in the 70s, and they're the native people of Australia. Just bring home how this has been going on. And there are some other parallels between America and what has been going on there that I want to draw. And I have a feeling I'm going to be doing some research to see if there's a correlation between how Blacks are treated globally. So as far as like time schedules of when we are oppressed or when we are relieved of some level of oppression to a lesser or less obvious oppression. So after that, we're going to be listening to the poem, The White Man's Burden. It'll be like a 3-minute poem. And then after we have clearly identified, because the movie that I'm going to show today is only 34 minutes long, I am going to be talking to you guys through it and trying to read your comments through it. But I just want to say that it's a lot to take in. It's a lot. And so I want to lay the foundation for what paternalism really looks like and how harmful it is prior to us getting to that movie, because it is a propaganda movie. And what I want us to remember is that this is how whites teach other whites about their interactions with Blacks. And so a lot of the niceness that you get from white people is actually a form of paternalism. And it can be dangerous. And sometimes it can come off as they're very nice. But it's all paternalism. It's how they were taught to view their relationship with us, to care for us the way you would a child that can't care for themselves. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and scoot forward so I can reach my computer and get into it. I'm going to do the reading first. I don't know that I want to do the reading in front of you guys because I think I might get upset. But yeah, let's get into it. So first I want to talk about the racial purification of the Aborigines, because this was a form of paternalism, and it will help put in perspective the nice way that they try to spin it in the movie. Because in the movie, they're going to make it like white people are so great to Black people and they're saving us from a million things. Paternalism is the reason the South Africans don't want to leave South Africa. It's the reason why they say Haiti is basically trash. And so I just want to get into the form of paternalism that was used in Australia. And mind you, paternalism is their word. It's not my word. It's what they call how they treat us. And so because of that, I want to make sure that I'm using the terminology that they're using. And I think it also speaks to their mindset. So with that said, let me go ahead. I'm going to do this off camera, y'all, because I can't on camera. And I just want to talk about the paternalism that went on in Australia, and then we're going to follow the format as I laid it out. So there is a young woman named Valerie Linnow, and she has a quote that says, "It was because of the color of their skin." Notice she says their skin, even though she is one of them, but she's been brainwashed because she was taken away from her Aboriginal family and raised among whites. So she has that detachment. It was because of the color of their skin to make the country whiter and whiter. The way to do it was to get the half caste out of the way. Compassionate Australians recoil from that idea, but the historical record shows that this young lady who was transported to Bomaderry Children's Home when she was just 2 years old is absolutely right. She was subjected to abuse and rape while under the Aborigines Welfare Board supervision. And that history lesson that we're teaching today was her actual life. She says, "We were the first street kids. We had to survive on nothing." She was eventually compensated $3,500 for the abuse she suffered while she was a ward of the state. The government is trying to fly her around, and the prime minister apologized to her directly in parliament. But I'd ask you, when there are only less than 700,000 Aborigines left in the country, if an apology to one young woman excuses the actions that they took that nearly wiped out all of the Black people in Australia. She and the other children that were stolen were born into a country during a time where white supremacy created policies that shattered families. Their word, not mine. You know, I hate the term white supremacy. They are vile. It's white barbarianism, if anything. And they had the scientific stamp of approval for this. There's a quote saying, "The Australian native is the most easily assimilated race on earth, physically and mentally, a blending with the Azaic through tending to increase virility is not desirable. The quickest way is to breed him white." Scientists and social scientists who calibrated how many drops of white blood made a person civilized gave politicians throughout Australia who were worrying about the half-caste problem the arguments needed to remove Indigenous children from their family. The Melbourne University ethnographer, Professor Baldwin Spencer, who was made Chief Protector of Aborigines in Northern Territory from 1911 to 1912, said, "No half-caste children should be allowed to remain in any native group." This was the obsession that they had over the mixed children and the young Aboriginal children. A half-caste child was a mixed child. In an official 1913 report, he wrote, "In practically all cases, the mother is a full-blooded Aborigine. The father may be a white man, a Chinese, a Japanese, a Malay, or Filipino. Again, these are all considered white people." For those who had a problem with me calling Asians white, when they were breeding the Aborigines out, the half-caste children and the concern with turning them white included Chinese, Japanese, Malay, and Filipinos, in addition to whites. The mother is of a very low intellectual grade, while the father most often belongs to the coarser and more unrefined members of the higher races. The consequence of this is that the children of such parents are not likely to be, in most cases, of much greater intellectual caliber than the more intelligent natives, though, of course, there are exceptions to this. So they considered all of the blacks to be stupid, and the whites that were admixing with them to be the lowest of the white races. It seemed only right to give children with enough drops of white blood the chance to join the superior race. And for 50 years, from 1919 to 1929 to 1939 to 1949 to 1959 to 1969, the government used its power to take indigenous children from their families and make them wards of the state. They gave them to white families, they raised them in institutions. The Aborigines did try to fight back. They would write letters, they would beg for their children not to be taken away. A man named George Bray said, "We were taken away at 9 years old and brainwashed towards living the white society instead of living in the old Aborigine way. We were brought in to forget that sort of thing." Now, I want to move to the second part of this before we get to the movie that I'm going to show. And I want to talk about a man named Cecil Cook. This man lived from 1897 to 1985. And he was in charge of the racial purification and paternalism used in Australia. His title, if you could believe it, was Aborigine Protector. His title was the Protector. And I want to close with a quote. After decades upon decades of stealing children, of killing, of breeding out the Aboriginals, to the point where now today they would be considered an endangered species if they were animals. There are less than 700,000 Aborigines living, and many of them are not full-blooded. They nearly wiped out the entire population of Aborigines. They nearly destroyed them all. These are our Black family in Australia. This monster was quoted as saying, he complained in 1969 that a once necessary paternalism had been maintained by public service. I want to repeat it because paternalism is the topic for the day, and it is the topic of the movie that we are about to watch. They considered the racial admixing for the purposes of destroying all Aborigines, committing genocide, as paternalism. They called taking those children and brainwashing them into believing in white superiority and breeding them to breed out their Blackness, paternalism. He complained in 1969 that a once necessary paternalism had been maintained by a public service, seized with the importance of precedent, inducing a psychology of dependency among Aborigines. Meanwhile, he believed Aborigines were being tempted by an irresponsible mass media to blame whites for all of their misfortunes. Does that sound familiar? Are we accused of blaming whites for all of our misfortune? Paternalism. That's what we're talking about today. That's what they called what they did to the Aborigines in Australia. And so I wanted to make it clear, because this video is propaganda and it's meant to make it look beautiful, and it's talking about what they did to the people in Africa. And I just want to make it clear before we watch this video that what is portrayed in this video is exactly what is described by that monster, which is paternalism. It is paternalism. It is their word for what they do to Blacks. They believe it to be good, and they're going to try to portray it to be good. Let me go ahead and share my screen with you guys. And we're going to dig into the movie. Let me go ahead and give my disclaimer. Federal law allows citizens to reproduce, distribute, or exhibit portions of copyrighted motion, pictures, videotapes, or video discs under certain circumstances without the authorization of the copyright holder. This is called fair use and is allowed for purposes of criticism, news reporting, teaching, and parody, which doesn't infringe of copyright under 17 USC 107. We're going to do two things here. We're going to be watching, and I don't know if any of you have heard of McGraw Hill. They make textbooks. We're going to be watching their movie. This is people who make textbooks for your children. But before we do, I want us to take just about 2.5 minutes, it's not even 3 minutes long, to listen to the poem, The White Man's Burden. You have to understand how deeply seated in the white psyche their treatment of us is. That in their schools, that across the globe, they preach this. And we have to recognize that. And so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to play this, and then we're going to get into the movie.
Take out the white man's burden, send forth the best you breed. Go bind your sons to exile, to serve your captives' need, to wait in heavy harness on fluttered folk and wild, your new court sullen peoples, half devil and half child. Take out the white man's burden, in patience to abide, to veil the threat of terror and check the show of pride. By open speech and simple, 100 times made plain, to seek another's profit and work another's gain. Take up the white man's burden, savage war and peace. Fill full the mouth of famine and bid the sickness cease. And when your goal is nearest, the end for others sought, watch sloth and heathen folly bring all your hope to naught. Take up the white man's burden, no tawdry rule of kings, the toil of serf and sweeper, the tale of common things. Halls ye shall not enter, the roads ye shall not tread. Go make them with your living, and mark them with your dead. Take up the white man's burden, and reap his old reward. The blame of those ye better, the hate of those ye guard. The cry of hosts ye humour, are slowly toward the light. I brought ye us from bondage, our loved Egyptian night. Take up the white man's burden, dare not stoop to less, nor call too loud on freedom to cloak your weariness. By all ye cry or whisper, by all ye leave or do, silent, sullen peoples shall weigh your God and you. Take up the white man's burden, have done with childish days. The lightly proffered laurel, the easy, ungrudged praise, comes now to search your manhood through all the thankless years. Gold edge with dear bought wisdom, the judgment of your peers.
All right, so they're full of themselves. They're so full of themselves. That poem is a disgusting poem, but what's even more disgusting is what we're about to watch. This is titled, they call it The White Man's Burden. I'll be uploading the unedited copy of this onto my Patreon. You do not need to pay to use my Patreon to be able to watch this. It's going to be there for free. So we're going to be talking during this one. So if you want to be able to watch it unedited, if you want to be able to screen grab it so that you can use it for teaching at your homeschool, if you want to be able to get the full video for your channel or whatever your outlet is, I will have it up on my Patreon. There is a Firefox program that'll allow you to grab it. Or you can send me a message on my Patreon and I will give you the actual video itself, because this is on my computer, so I don't have a link for it. But let's go ahead and get into it. I want to just point out a couple things. Number one, this is McGraw Hill. They make textbooks, okay, for our children today. And as you watch this, I just want you to consider that these are the people who make textbooks for our kids. This film is from 1957, so basically 1960.
Everybody's turned out for the celebration. There's an Englishman on hand, too, the district officer, and he has an important message to deliver. But he'll wait until the festivities are over.
Okay, first of all, I just want to say I don't like their dancing in front of this white man, but start watching the dances they're doing, y'all. Like, I swear these are some of the dances we do today. I'm not even kidding. This mess is crazy. You'll see it. This is like stepping, isn't it? In college, this is just like stepping. If you've ever been on a step team, it's just like this. Look at him. He's so smooth. He's so smooth with it. Ah, I'm telling you, they're dancing their asses off, y'all.
Now it's time to deliver the speech. The interpreter is summoned. He's probably going to talk about building that new road, though it might be any one of a dozen projects. This might be any one of many British colonies in remote parts of the world. This district officer was the embodiment of imperial authority. That authority has sometimes been called paternalistic. That's our topic in this program. In our last program, we saw how highly debatable the whole subject of colonialism has become. We'll be pursuing that debate through the next few programs, starting now with one aspect of it, paternalism.
Okay, so let me pause this. I don't know if you guys caught that. He said starting now with one aspect of it, paternalism. I want to rewind this because this is what they call their treatment of Black people. They call it paternalism. This is their word. They truly view us like children that they take care of. So I'm just going to back it up a little because I want you guys to catch why I titled this Paternalism, the White Man's Burden, because that's what they call it. It is a burden for white men to have to care for all of us non-whites, basically Black people. Okay. And what they did to the Aborigines, the slaughtering of them so that there are not even 700,000 of those people left. And I'm going to talk about this later in the week. They have gone through the earth in India, all over Asia, all over South America, and they have murdered the Black people so that the indigenous populations are near extinct. And these are Black people, like full on Black, not of African descent, but Black nonetheless. Because, you know, there are Native people who are Black, and then there are people of Afro descent that are Black. So I want to play this again because I want to hear, you heard when they called the massacre of the Aborigines, the breeding out of Aboriginal blood, paternalism. Note he's using the same word, paternalism. And this is a whole nother continent. White people are very organized. Tomorrow, I'm going to prove to you that right now they are organizing to maintain the status quo of paternalism, as in this month. Okay, as in 2019, they are actively and openly talking about maintaining the concept of paternalism, and our president is in on it and helping with that organization. We're going to be talking about that tomorrow, and I'm going to be showing you some video footage to verify that, so unequivocally. So I just want to play this again, and I want you to hear him talk about paternalism, because that is what they're going to call everything that's about to follow in this film.
The interpreter is summoned. He's probably going to talk about building that new road, though it might be any one of a dozen projects. This might be any one of many British colonies in remote parts of the world. This district officer was the embodiment of imperial authority. That authority has sometimes been called paternalistic. That's our topic in this program. In our last program, we saw how highly debatable the whole subject of colonialism has become. We'll be pursuing that debate through the next few programs.
How highly debatable the whole concept of colonialism has become. They have been talking about this since way back then.
Starting now with one aspect of it, paternalism. The business of the great white father telling the natives what to do for their own good.
Dude, did you hear him? I'm sorry. He said the business of the great white father telling the natives what to do. He's not even kidding. Like, he's not making jokes. They're literally being serious right now.
The next few programs. Starting now with one aspect of it, paternalism. The business of the great white father telling the natives what to do for their own good. Who are these natives? What are they like? These far-flung colonies. Union Jack had often been heisted over lands with ancient societies of their own, as in parts of West Africa. Many of these lands were teeming with people, unlike colonial Canada and Australia. And the people were not necessarily barbarians. But Britain also acquired other possessions, like New Guinea in the Pacific, where the people were still living in the Neolithic stage. And today in Malaya, there are tribes which have not progressed much further. All these people, no matter how simple, had their own way of doing things, of getting their food and cooking it, and making tools and clothes and weapons. Some were developing crafts that were quite complex. The evolution was very slow.
I'm pissed off he called them simple. He literally just called these people simple. That's what they think. I mean, he did say the great white father just like 3 minutes ago.
Whether it was in East Africa or West, the Seychelles or the Solomons, North Borneo or Fiji, these people had cultures of one sort or another. Often there were severe limitations. primitive tools scratching at the parched earth could make agriculture backbreaking and unrewarding. For simple people, the soil often withheld its bounty and allowed hunger to flourish. There were other horrors, like the locust. This was the tragedy, but there's skill enough even to begin to control the hostility of nature.
Right now, they're just laying out how helpless they are. Because remember, this is a propaganda film meant to teach white people. So he's laying out all the things they're incapable of doing for themselves. He's saying they're simple people, right? They're not spraying their crops with pesticides. They're beating the locusts. They're just, like giant children running around. And the white father, and I'm calling him that because he called himself that, okay? He said the great white father. Okay. They're calling this part of their series because this was a series of videos. And so this part of the series is covering paternalism, where the great white father comes in and civilizes the crappy African, the childlike African. And I want to just digress and say, remember, they called the admixing of the Aborigines and the taking of their children and placing them with white families to breed out the Aboriginal blood in their blackness. They called that paternalism in Australia. So this is paternalism in Africa.
Imperialism spoke of these people as half devil and half child. In the 19th century, many Britons felt it was
Okay, I want to rewind this. He says they're half devil, half child. Let me pause this. I don't know how well you guys can hear this because it's old and I've tried to turn my mic up really loud. So I'm sorry if it's super loud when I talk. He said the African is half devil, half child. Like, this is a real, what pisses me off is that this is a real educational film. Like, in real life, they were teaching people with this shit. Half devil, half child. Get the fuck out. Like,
Kipling, poet of imperialism, spoke of these people as half devil and half child. In the 19th century, many Britons felt it was their duty to bring British law to them. Of course, this may now seem to have been very arrogant and high-handed. Cynics may say the real reason imperialists established law and order is to make it safe for themselves to take everything in sight and ship it back to the mother country.
whoa, did you hear that? Oh, he's saying the most. He said critics say that the reason that they're trying to civilize the natives is because they want to have control to take all the resources and send it back to their mother country. Are you guys listening to this? Because he's talking in a very calm voice that's really boring to listen to, but listen to his words. He's freaking out of control. This guy is a savage. Okay, like the shit he's saying right now is off the chain. It's literally insane, the words that are coming out of his mouth. I'm going to go back because I just need you guys to listen carefully to what this man is saying, because he is a stone cold freaking trip.
Kipling, poet of imperialism, spoke of these people as half devil and half child. In the 19th century, many Britons felt it was their duty to bring British law to them. Of course, this may now seem to have been very arrogant and high-handed. Cynics may say that the real reason imperialists established law and order is to make it safe for themselves to take everything in sight and ship it back to the mother country. We'll be going into that later. Let's first consider some of the things that were going on in these remote places when the British arrived. Let's try to understand what the natural British reaction might have been, for there were many grim things to be seen. There was cannibalism in some places, and kings and priests who conducted human sacrifices, for life could be very cheap.
So let's be clear on the purpose of this film. I'm gonna let it play, but I'm gonna turn the volume off.
In Africa, there were endless.
He's gonna go into how savage we are, okay? Because he just finished saying that we were half devil, half child. And that critics might think that white people are just coming in because they want to take control and take all the resources and ship it back to white land, okay? But the reality is they had to do it because we were literally just killing each other and eating each other and acting a freaking fool over there. This is like what he's sitting here saying this and he's being serious because this is an educational film.
It was indirectly through the chiefs that the British often governed. Though they had sometimes conquered through force, they tried to rule through persuasion, to try to help the uncivilized. For this was an age with little self-criticism, and few Europeans doubted the marvelous wisdom of the European way of life. Although there were a few Africans, a few old-timers, who didn't want any part of it. The British allowed tribal councils and tribal courts to continue, but they brought their own institutions to operate alongside. And in a British-style court, justice was not quite as arbitrary as it might be in a native one. From another British official, some advice. Taxes have been collected locally, and the money is in neat little bags. Now the chiefs are meeting to decide how it will be spent. Everybody agrees that 2 bags full should go for road repairs, so that's budgeted. But what about repairs to the school? There are some disagreements here. One thing is certain, the people will be getting something for their tax money. In many cases, before the British came, the chiefs raised taxes by force and spent them as they pleased. He's saying that the chiefs were thieves, but then the white man came and taught them not to steal and to do productive things with their money. See, the way white people talk is the way white people talk is a trip, but he's like dead serious right now. He's going through because there was pushback by some white people, right? About them running and just taking all, because Africa is one of the richest continents on the planet. Like everything is there. And so there was a lot of pushback by some white people about how they were going and just stealing everything. And so he's like, no, they were eating each other. The chiefs were taxing people and not even knowing what to do with the money. They were stealing the money. So this is a propaganda film. I just want to be clear about that, okay? So he's going into all the reasons why it's not just about stealing Africa's resources, because the people, like he said earlier, were half devil, half child. And the great white father, his words, not mine, for those of you who missed it, he called white people the great white father. Indifferent. Needs a lot of revising in the light of the British record. Stereotype picture many people have about colonial officials. High-handed, bureaucratic, indifferent. Needs a lot of revising in the light of the British record. For well over half a century now, the British Colonial Service, known since 1954 as Her Majesty's Overseas Civil Service, has produced a remarkable group of men. Paternalism.
Okay, so colonial service, the British Colonial Service is what they called going in and taking over Black people's land. That's what they did in South Africa. The Colonial Service came in and took over land that didn't belong to them.
Soon be outdated, but it has had its devoted servants too. men who were genuinely concerned about the glaring needs and difficulties of the colonial subjects. The ancient traditional ways of doing things are not always good ways, for they can consume a tremendous amount of human energy and still produce indifferent results. If only these people could be taught to use a plow, to make an animal do the work.
He said if only these people could be taught to use a plow, because that's so flippin' hard. Because they're just too stupid. Like maybe we could teach them to walk behind a donkey. Like really?
It takes a bit of practice, but isn't it much better than bending over and doing it with your hands? If the chief agrees, everybody in the village will agree. The tribe will take up plowing, making life much easier for themselves. But in many cases, better work methods aren't enough. The land itself must be enriched.
So this is he's on some stuff right now. Again, this is a propaganda film to justify the continued infiltration of Africa. Now, clearly all of Africa was not nomadic tribes or people that lived in a traditional way. We know that some of, the largest library in the world was on Africa. That African civilization, not just Egypt, okay, but Nubia, all of South Africa, all of East Africa. Okay, those places were highly developed with incredible structures that during the colonial process were completely destroyed. Were there native people that lived in these traditional ways? Yes. But the idea that all of Africa was like this is absolutely stupid. But remember that this is a propaganda film. So what they did was they went and they found, okay, wait. He's claiming that he's teaching them about irrigation. Like, I don't know if you guys have watched like many of the nomadic tribes in Africa. These people can find water in the middle of a freaking desert. Like they will go around where there's nothing but sand and they will find water. They're like experts at this life. And so this whole lecture he's giving right now is pretending that the white people came there. Look, no, I'm pissed off about this. Okay, so wait. When I saw this, I was mad. Okay, so look, he has two plants in his hand. You're going to see it in a minute. He's holding two plants. This is such propaganda. The little plant is what they've managed to accomplish. Look, you got this little tiny plant, okay? And all you have to do is use this irrigation system. I'm narrating because this is what it literally says. I've watched this. And then he says, you can make a plant that's this big if only you do what I tell you. This is what is going on right now, instead of a little tiny plant like this. And he's claiming this is the reason why whites went to Africa and took everything over. Because without these conversations, these African people would barely be getting by because they're half devil, half child, as he said earlier. Why are they all clapping, though?
Projects were started in various parts of the empire. The simple fact of water running through the...
I'm pissed off they had, like, how much did they pay these people? What did they tell these people? You know what I mean? Like, what was the explanation that was given for this setup? That's what I want to know. What was the explanation? Because they don't speak English, that their translator gave them for the shenanigans. I really wonder. I'm very curious. We're about halfway through the movie. We're almost done, and then we're gonna have a little bit of a discussion.
The tsetse fly, only a bit bigger than the common housefly, but this sucks blood and carries microscopic agents of sleeping sickness, of disease and death for both man and beast.
Yeah, I agree, Liberty. I think that they got money and they didn't know what. There's no way they could have known this was going to be propaganda. Do you know what I'm saying? I don't know what the translators told these people to get them to go along with this, but I'm sure it wasn't the truth. Okay. I am sure it wasn't the truth.
The chief was wise, and he agreed. The tribe's cattle were inoculated. Now there would not be so much disease, not for the animals.
I'm mad that they're trying to make it like nobody would have given their animals a bath if it wasn't for white people. Like, really? No, they wouldn't have done. If Black people were so darn helpless, how is it that we survived until, as he put it earlier, the great white father? Because that's what we're going to go back to, that because we got to end with that clip when he said he called them the great white father. How did Black people survive until the great white father came there if they were literally that helpless? That's what I'm trying to understand. Oh my goodness, are they going to take responsibility for teaching them to build buildings too? Oh, I believe that they are. Okay. He's teaching them how to build a farm. He's just taking responsibility for everything right in Africa is because of the great white father.
Where it was not the practice before, the colonial authorities have put an end to much needless disease and human waste. Life in many colonial areas has certainly been improved. Once, famine and disease were constant threats. The tribes could sometimes increase their own misery by fighting not nature, but each other. When the British came, all this started to change.
He said when the British came, all this started to change.
May well be the key to the future of the underdeveloped parts of the world. We hear a great deal about industrialization of these places. Food is the first essential need. Teaching these people how to produce enough of it is probably a more fundamental achievement than building a steel mill for them.
I'm sorry, I'm going to need him to stop referring to them as these people. These people, maybe we can teach these people how to use a plow. Maybe we can teach these people, like, really?
A steel mill is spectacular. It gets a lot of publicity. Teaching agriculture, as the British Colonial Office has long been doing, is tedious, unspectacular work. You don't hear about it a great deal. The same is true of health services, a tremendous need. In Africa, for instance, when the British arrived, they found that the people had to face some terrifying diseases. And as a physician, the witch doctor left much to be desired.
This is hilarious because Educated Smoker on her channel, I'm going to go ahead and let it play while I talk to you guys. Educated Smoker on her channel is reading medical apartheid. And these witch doctors White people were stealing their medicine when they were bringing them over as slaves from Africa because the witch doctors had more flippin' sense than the white doctors of the time. So this is the same thing that they paint now, as when they show Africa now, feed the children, Africa's is rife with disease and famine and da-da-da. This is exactly, if the white man's so great, then why are all these problems still going on in Africa? Because they sure as hell took everything over. I mean, they've infiltrated almost every damn place in Africa, but they haven't managed with their, what did he call them? The great white father hasn't managed to fix these problems yet. For Africa is forever being portrayed this way. He's going to have the audacity to act like they taught them about something when we know over in Europe, they were throwing their piss and poop into the freaking street. That's how the Black Plague started. And he's going to talk about how civilized white people are. Like history has no foundation in anything. Like when they came to America, white people weren't so diseased that the Native Americans just started dying because the whites had so many diseases that their pure bodies couldn't even withstand. And he's going to talk about the diseases of Africa. African slaves got sick because the white people were so diseased and they had never been exposed to those kinds of illnesses. And he's going to actually make like whites brought all these improvements. If these kids are sick, it's probably from contact with white people. I'm not even kidding. I'm not even trying to be mean. That's just real history. Europe was a cesspool of disease. Those people were nasty. White people are so smart, but they were taking little funky butts to Africa for 10 and 15 years at a time to learn stuff from Africans. Really? But they're so smart. Oh, look, and these are now the civilized Black people. They've been around white people a lot. They're all a little bit lighter.
The African doctor who understands his own people is especially valuable.
Oh my gosh. Y'all, the African doctor who understands his own people is especially valuable. How many of you guys were around for the video I did where I read Margaret Sanger's letter? And she said they were going to infiltrate the Black communities using the doctors and the preachers because Black people don't really trust white doctors. So if we could train the Black doctor to go and do the work of the white man, and why is he saying the same thing? I'm telling you, they're very consistent. Just like in Australia, they were wiping out Aborigines and calling it paternalism. And this whole video is about paternalism. According to his words, not mine. According to the white people's words, not mine. Why is he literally using the same concept as Margaret Sanger? For those of you who were around when I read her letter about how they would infiltrate the Black community for the eugenic cause, and here this man is talking about the Black doctor is especially valuable.
In Britain, there are students from all over the colonies learning medicine. For in the lands they come from, the demand for trained doctors far exceeds the supply. The African doctor who understands his own people is especially valuable. He and others like him are increasingly in evidence in Africa's consulting rooms and operating theaters.
You know how I know this is propaganda? This movie has gone from them being barbarians to performing surgery. In 22 minutes, they've gone from being incapable of doing anything but dancing around for white people to the great white father, as he calls them in this movie, okay? The narrator calls him the great white father came, and now they're dressed, they're holding civilized conversations. Look at, he's pointing with a pencil. They're performing surgery, all in the span of 23 minutes, y'all. All this has happened because of white people.
Elite group of colonial people to become doctors. What education should you give the ordinary people? There are some white people and some countries that believe that you shouldn't spread modern Western ideas among primitive subject peoples. They're convinced that
Primitive subject peoples. Subject. Primitive subject. You know what a subject is? You know how rulers have subjects? See, he's speaking European English. Primitive subject. The subjects. Your subjects, as in I rule over my subjects. Primitive subject people. He's like, I'm telling you, his narration, y'all, like I said, I'm going to be putting the full movie up on my Patreon. It's going to be free, so you can get it from there. You can email me on that, or you can message me on that movie if you need the hard copy of this movie, because this is not this is on my computer, so I can't give you guys a link to it. Yeah. Because this man, like if you watch this whole movie from beginning to end, my man actually couldn't do it. He taught his students with this movie, both the middle school students, because you know he works with youth programs for Black children, and all the way up to the college level. And he can't sit through more than 15 minutes of it without getting so angry that he has to stop the movie.
only cause trouble. Things should be left as they are, simple. By and large, British colonial administrations have never taken that attitude. Where they have found an appetite for learning and literacy, they have tried to teach. How much interest and curiosity have primitive people shown with regard to Western ways? It can vary, of course, from place to place.
Oh, snap. Who did they bring in to teach them, y'all? Wait, stop playing around. Who did they bring in to teach the Black people? Come on, just one person in the chat room. Who did they bring in to teach the white people? Who just got off of a freaking white horse? I'm pissed off about this. Who just got off of a damn white horse to teach the Black people? There she is. She done popped herself off of a palomino. Is it not the same today? The white woman, yes, y'all, the white woman. I'm mad about this. Is it not the same today? But teach these primitives. We're gonna bring in our women. What savages? You know, what these primitive savage people? Who will be interested in learning? She hops herself off of a white horse. Why did she hop off of a damn white? Tell me right now. Why is this broad leaping off of a nearly white horse to come and teach the Black people? You explain it to me.
It's the district officer and his wife come for a visit. They brought an interesting machine.
I can't with this imagery. Like, I cannot with this imagery. It is just ridiculous. Everything that comes out of this man's mouth is a problem.
It's hard not to be curious about a marvel like this. Curiosity doesn't preclude suspicion. And suspicion could turn into hostility when the white man starts talking about the real reason for his visit, to collect taxes.
Oh, the white man wants some money now. Oh, stop. Oh, wait a second. wait a second. The white man wants some money now? Oh, he did all this. What did he call himself? The great white father? They did all this paternalism. Now they want some money. Now they want your money. They're like, you didn't ask us to come, but now that we're here. He said once they find out the real reason for his visit is to collect taxes, it's a problem. Really?
Wrong way to do everything. Our friend is a specialist in the wrong way. This man is a carefree, do-it-yourself spirit.
Okay, wait. We do see what's happening here, right? They are putting on a play for the primitive people. One person is doing it the wrong way, and one person is doing it the right way. This is a play. It's so condescending. Like, there are just no words.
Turn a garden into a desert. Actually, he much prefers the life of the open road. Travel broadens one, and you meet all sorts of interesting people.
Why do they have that black man dressed like that? Is he a zip coon? Remember we went through, for those of you who saw that, the white men, how they characterize different types of black men. The zip coon was one. Do you think that the guy with the pants pulled up high, real clean, glasses on, dressed totally inappropriate for the activity he's doing, could that be the zip coon? Because, you know, they have these categorizations for us. So the fact that he's literally doing that and this is all staged, and they're so consistent with their rhetoric. If nothing else, we have to give them that. Oh, look at that. Now he knows how to drive properly when he sees a car.
Now some instructions to read. Really quite simple.
You know what? I can't.
But it's a very serious problem. Illiteracy.
My question is, illiteracy of what? Was not the first freaking paper in Africa? Was not the largest library in the world in Africa? Oh, let me guess. They can't read English. So that's illiterate? Because they can't read your language? I can't read Japanese. Am I illiterate? It's just very condescending. So again, this movie, yeah, Brown Skin Queen. If you go to my series on archetypes and or my video on archetypes and stereotypes from last week, a zip coon. That's one of their names for Black people. It's got a whole description and everything. So we get the general gist of this movie. It's down to the last 2 minutes of the movie, but I want to be clear about something. This is why I wanted to touch on this. So I want to go back to what I was reading earlier. This whole video, and actually let me go ahead and I'm going to play that part again. Okay? Because I want to be clear. I want to bring it back around to what we discussed at the beginning of the movie. So let's see. Is this about where he says the Great White Father? Let's see.
One of a dozen projects. This might be any one of many British colonies in remote parts of the world. This district officer was the embodiment of imperial authority. That authority has sometimes been called paternalistic. That's our topic in this program.
Okay, you heard him. Paternalistic is the topic of this program. Paternalism is the topic of this program. And I want you to remember that because I'm going to go back to where I started to show you what paternalism looks like after they come in with all their fancy crap.
In our last program, we saw how highly debatable the whole subject of colonialism has become. We'll be pursuing that debate through the next few programs, starting now with one aspect of it, paternalism, the business of the Great White Father telling the natives what to do for their own good.
I don't know why I get such satisfaction of white people talking honestly. He said the business of the Great White Father. Let's just listen to it one more time, and then I'm going to get back to where we started. Because there's just nothing like his beautiful explanation of the fuckery to just really put things in perspective.
As the embodiment of imperial authority. That authority has sometimes been called paternalistic. That's our topic in this program. In our last program, we saw how highly debatable the whole subject of colonialism has become. We'll be pursuing that debate through the next few programs, starting now with one aspect of it, paternalism, the business of the Great White Father telling the natives what to do for their own good.
The business of the Great White Father telling the natives what to do for their own good. And I think I've had just about enough of that damn movie. So with that, I want to go back to where we started. Okay, I want to get back to where we began. And where we began was talking about Australia. And we began with a quote from Cecil Cook, who was single-handedly responsible for the policies to obliterate the Aborigine people by the admixing of them with whites. They figured, and let's go a little deeper into this after I read the quote from him. They figured you could take a mixed person and mix them with white and mix them with white and mix them with white. And in that time, they considered white, Japanese, Chinese, and Malaysian. They called it Malay at the time, white. You could take an Aborigine, mix them with any of those greater superior races, then mix the child again, then mix the child again. And they had it down to a science when that person would be white enough. The policies ripped Aborigine children out of their parents' home and placed them with white families to brainwash them. Okay? And what did they call it? This man had power in Australia until the 70s, y'all. The Aborigines weren't even considered citizens in their own land until the 70s. And what did he call it? He complained in 1969 that a once necessary paternalism, isn't that the same thing the guy in the movie said? He complained in 1969 that a once necessary paternalism had been maintained by a public service. Did we not just watch a whole mockumentary about paternalism being for the public good of the savage, the half devil, half child, as they called us? So this psychopath who killed all but there aren't even 700,000 Aborigines left on this planet, nearly completely wiped out every Black person from Australia, complained in 1969 that a once necessary paternalism had been maintained by a public service. It's crap like that that they needed to make that propaganda film for. Paternalism as a public service, seized with the importance of precedent, including psychology of dependency among Aborigines. Did we not just watch a whole propaganda film that was supposed to bring home that point? Paternalism of the great white father. Their words, not mine. Taking care of the lowly, stupid native as a public service. It's a public service that they were doing. You just watched the film. Didn't that seem like a whole lot of talk them how to grow food, inoculate their animals, give them baths, taught them how to read? Because apparently if you can't read English, you're illiterate. All that goodness. This psychopath. He complained in 1969 that a once necessary paternalism had been maintained by a public service, seized with the importance of precedent, including a psychology of dependency among Aborigines, because we are dependent on them. Meanwhile, he believed Aborigines were being tempted by an irresponsible mass media to blame whites for all their misfortunes. Let me tell you, these people, let me stop sharing my screen. Hold on. Let me tell you, these people are psychotic. Okay? We just watched a whole propaganda film that was built to justify crap like what they did in Australia, to justify the rape and pillage of Africa. Paternalism as a public service. On two separate continents, the same rhetoric. We heard that man quote the same kind of rhetoric that Margaret Sanger was using about using Black doctors. They are consistent. When you know a nice white person, you know why white people are nice to a lot of us? Because we are like their children to them. I've heard Black people say that some of the nicest people have been white people. Some of the people who've done the most for me have been white people because they have been raised to view their relationship with us as paternalistic in nature. We are half demon, half child. Their words, not mine. You guys just heard it. What is scary is that there is a move for us to divide the Black diaspora, that the Aborigines, who are Black people, that the Blacks in India who have been all but wiped out and bred out, that the Blacks in America, that the Blacks in Africa, that the Blacks in South America, that the Blacks in the Caribbean islands, that we all fragment as if we are different. But let's be clear that white people treat us the same and they are consistent in their behavior throughout the globe. Tomorrow, we're going to be going over Candace Owens when she made that Hitler comment. I don't care about that freaking comment. We're going to be watching that whole meeting and talking about it. And in that meeting, they describe a plan to maintain the status quo of paternalism worldwide. I'm not even fucking kidding. They did this with cameras. That's how much they give two craps about what you're going to do. Because as we read in that book, the Black man has never competed. So they are bold enough to send a full-on Black woman ready to do a shuck and jive in full dance attire with her white handler into a room full of white people to talk about how they are unifying Europe and the United States with the backing of our president. This was said. I'm not kidding. We're going to watch this tomorrow. Recruit the Australians and the whites in the farthest reaches of the earth to maintain the status quo of paternalism as we see it. When asked if they thought they would get banned from Europe like Lauren Southern did, you know, that racist blonde white girl Lauren Southern, when they asked if they thought they would get banned from Europe like her, they said, we are backed by the president. You guys know I like Donald Trump. You know what I like about Donald Trump? Is he's with the bullshit. He doesn't give two craps. And we need to stop giving two craps. I admire people who function in honesty. The crap he says, I admire that he says it. I wish more of our people would be unapologetic that way. This man has a full-on Black woman with a white handler going into a room of white people to talk about unifying whites worldwide to maintain a system of paternalism. And it is because of that meeting that we showed this video today and had this discussion today. And at the same time, there is a push in major media for American descendants of slavery to separate themselves from other Blacks in the world when they treat us all the same, you guys. And these white people are unifying as they encourage us to separate. That is crazy. That doesn't seem suspect to anybody? Well, maybe it'll seem more suspect to you guys after, maybe it'll seem more suspect to you guys after we watch this meeting tomorrow. After you see a room full of white people get realer than they need to be. And so with that said, I will talk to you guys later. I hope you'll join me tomorrow because you ain't seen nothing until you've seen this meeting. This crap is like within the past month. These white people are out of control. Let me tell you something. These white people are doing the absolute freaking most, and they're doing it in the open. That was the craziest crap I've seen in a while. I was like, well, damn. Okay. Go ahead and film your meeting talking about whites unite. I mean, with a full-on Black girl in the room. Talking about, I think it's a good idea. I'm like, what the? I can't. we'll deal with that tomorrow, you guys. But I want you, as we're watching that meeting, to keep in mind what we saw here today. The Great White Father, as they call themselves, and paternalism. That is the relationship that whites feel they have with us. And with that said, I have some dinner to make. My day is very behind. I'm sorry that this was off schedule. As I said, give me until tomorrow to get that video up on my Patreon. It is free. I do have free content on my Patreon. A lot of historical footage like this. If you need the actual video itself, because I don't have a link, this is on my computer, you can leave me a message there. If you're not a patron, if you're a patron, you'll have my private email. If you're not a patron, you can leave me a message under the video and we'll figure out some way to get that to you. And any of the other, I like to throw up, like once a week, I throw up a historical, some historical footage. It could be a speech by a Black leader. It could be some bullshit like this. This week, it was on the original migrants, which were Black people. That's some shit to watch. They were like, we used to such and such with our slaves. Now we just rent them. We used to own our slaves. Now we just rent them. That one's a trip. That's the one I uploaded this week. But I'm going to go ahead and upload this one too, for those of you who want it for homeschooling or for your channel or anything like that. Any clips or anything that I use, you guys can always, because I don't like to put my email address online. Hold on one second. Sorry about that. I'm not like a hoarder of information. So if there's anything you guys ever want, go ahead and you can always reach out to me on one of my free contents on my Patreon. You can just, you can comment on that content. And I'm happy to share anything that I use here. I'm happy to share it with you guys. I'm not trying to keep it for myself or anything, because I realize it's useful for if you have a channel or if you're homeschooling or if anything like that. Like, we're just learning together. So it's not mine, right? So y'all can have it. I don't care. So I will have this up by tomorrow for those of you guys who want it. And feel free to check out the other free content that's there. I'm not trying to sell my Patreon to you. I don't care about that. But there is a lot of free stuff there that I think you guys will find very interesting. So, so yeah, go ahead and go there and see. Here goes my 3-year-old. So I'm going to go. Or my 4-year-old. No, you can't have marshmallows. Yeah, okay. I'm going to go. Because my dinner's actually cooking on the stove. And since he's... Do you want to say bye? Because I'm going to go.
Bye.
All right, you guys. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Mom, can you give me one chip and one marshmallow?
No, but do you want dinner? Because I haven't.